There we go. All right, so what we're looking at for right now is we're getting into measurement. That's this whole title of this unit. And so we have to do a lot of calculations, and that's why we reviewed BEDMAS last class. And what we're going to look at is metric measurement conversions. The reason is because the metric system, which is used in most of the world, more specifically in Canada, which was created in 1790, is the most simple and scientific system. And I'm going to get to why it's the most simple and scientific system compared to the imperial system, which the U.S. is clinging to. And we still have to, too, because of construction. Everything is in the imperial system with construction. And so it's because we have so many houses already built in Canada, it's too late to switch. Now, here's something really cool about the meter, which I'm sure most of you have had experience with and understand what a meter stick is, but don't know actually how it was invented or they came up with the meter stick. Is actually the meter is 1/10,000,000th of the distance from the North Pole to the equator. So but specifically it has to go through France and Spain because, well, in 1790, North America wasn't so developed. And so it's another way of saying it takes 10 million meters to go from the equator to the North Pole. Now, with the imperial measurement, which we're going to talk about later today, the problem was it was very variable. And what they wanted when they come up with a new measurement system is they wanted something that was always be constant. And since the Earth relatively is not changing sizes, they based that distance off the Earth. So the meter, 10 million meters gets you from the North Pole to the equator as long as you go through France and Spain, because the Earth, again, is not a perfect ball. Now, what we're going to look at today is conversions. Now, first off, so we'll throw that in here. We're going to do some conversions. And what you have to know is some typical metric units. So the smallest one that is kind of applicable in real life is millimeters. All right, that's the smallest one. Now, there is measurements much smaller than a millimeter, but it is pretty much in our life is probably the one we're going to use, the smallest measurement that we'll actually use. Now, the next one, probably use a little bit more. It's bigger, centimeters. All right, and then, of course, the main one here is the meter. Now, of course, we can go a little bit bigger, and this is probably, if you travel, is the one you're going to use probably the most. But again, these are all the most common metric measurements, and that is the kilometer. All right, so these are our most used in our life metric measurements. We got the millimeter, which is the smallest, which is like, I don't know, it's like drawing a line, two little lines, or and a centimeter is probably the distance between my C and or the width of my C and my M on your screen there. That might be a centimeter, or that box on your screen might be a centimeter. And then, of course, a meter is like sticking your arms out and from fingertip to fingertip. Probably not for me. I'm a little too short, but. And then a kilometer, of course, is like what it would take you probably, I don't know, to run 6 or 7 minutes. That distance you would cover would be roughly a kilometer. Now, again, here's what we're looking for with conversions, is that if I want to go from millimeters, we have millimeters, I want to go from centimeters. Now, again, as we go from right to left, or left to right, sorry, the distances are getting bigger, all right? And so when I go from millimeters to centimeters, because a centimeter is bigger, I'm going to divide my millimeters by 10. All right, and then when I go from centimeters to meters, I'm going to divide by 100. Because again, there is 10 millimeters in a centimeter, there is 100 centimeters in a meter, and there's 1,000 meters in a kilometer. And so to go from meters to kilometers, we're going to have to divide by 1,000. Now, if I work the opposite way, I'm going to do the opposite. All right, so if I go from kilometers to meters, so I go the other way, Well, what's the opposite of dividing by 100? Multiplying by 100. So I use a big dot for multiplying, or sorry, 1,000. Dividing by 1,000, I'm going to multiply by 1,000. All right, now going the other way again from meters to centimeters. If going from centimeters to meters is dividing by 100, well, the opposite would be multiplying by 100. Because again, there is 100 centimeters in a meter. And then of course, the last one again, if I go from millimeters to centimeters and I'm dividing by 10, well then working the opposite way, I'm going to multiply by 10. So here again is why the metric system is the most scientific. Number one is that it is based on our Earth and the distance from the North Pole to the equator. But the other thing is that it's the most simplest because we're always working with tens, 100s, 1000s, decimal places. And this really helped people out back in 1790 before calculators. All right, now let's see here if I can copy this. Because now we're going to look at some conversions. All right, so let's see what happens here. Hey, it worked out. All right, so I'm going to move that all down. Probably not, eh? All right. So the first thing is I want to convert 420 millimeters to centimeters. All right, so when we look here, I've got 420 millimeters, and I'm going to centimeters, and you can see here by my conversion chart, all I need to do is simply divide by 10. All right, and so I got to come up with a symbol for division here in my keyboard, as I've mentioned. But let's see here. So I take my 420 millimeters, and I divide by 10. And of course, if you got a calculator handy, I always have one handy here. I take 420 and divide it by 10, I get 42 centimeters. All right, nothing too crazy there, but now we're also going to go from, now we get a little bit different here. In B is that I'm going from 16,000 centimeters to kilometers. All right, so I'm going from centimeters to kilometers. So it's not as easy as just going from millimeters to centimeters where I'm making one jump. I'm actually making two jumps. But here's how we deal with it for two jumps. Is I'm going to take that 16,000 centimeters. Whoops, centimeters. Okay. Now the first jump, when I go from centimeters to meters, I got to divide by 100. And then I'm going to jump from meters to kilometers. So then I'm going to divide by 1,000. And so now I take my 16,000, get my calculator here. I divide by 100. I can do this all in one step. I get 160. All right. Then I take the 160 and I divide by 1,000 and I get 0.16. And I can't forget my units here. Kilometers. So when there's more than one step, we just do the number of steps or the jumps that it takes. All right, so that is going the red way. What about the green way? Let's see here if I can. There we go. There's my. All right, so again, I'm going to convert now from 8 meters, all right, to millimeters. So again, I'm going to have to make two jumps here. And now because I'm going to the left, I'm going to be multiplying. And the earlier ones, the first two, I went to the right. So I was dividing because I was going up to a higher unit. I'm dividing. Now I'm going to a smaller unit. So I'm multiplying. All right. So I look at my 18 meters. All right. Now I got to convert that to centimeters. And so I'm going to multiply by 100 to get it to centimeters. But then I have to continue on and go to millimeters, which it says I have to multiply by 10. And so again, I can do all these jumps all these calculations all at once. And so I take my 18 meters, I times it by 100, and I get 1,800. And then I times it by 10, and now I get 18,000 millimeters. And there we go. Let me see here. In D, I get to convert 2 kilometers to centimeters. So again, it looks like I have to make 2 jumps here. I got to go from kilometers to meters and then meters to centimeters. So again, I have my original unit here, 2 kilometers. All right, I've got to make the jump to meters. So it says times by 1,000. And then I got to go from meters to centimeters. Whoa, this number is going to be a big one, it looks like. Times it by 100. All right, and so if I make those jumps, let's see here. Well, 2 times 1,000 is 2,000. And then I times it by 100. And I'm going to get 200,000 centimeters. And there we go. So again, you need your little conversion table here, which again, metric measurement, it's the reason the whole world has, most of the world has converted to, is because the calculations are much simpler. Later on in our next class, we're going to get into imperial measurement. There is a sheet on the Google website or the Google Classroom that you should print off. You're going to need to print off. Very handy to have in front of you. All right, where the calculations are not so simple.